Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Welcome to Everybody Hates Rand, your friendly neighborhood Wheel of Time podcast. I'm Emily Jusha.
And I'm Sally Goodger.
And we just read 2 chapters today, so that's nice, I guess. The first chapter in this section is just Nynaeve, and it is her going through the test to become an Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
And the best I can say of it really is that it's slightly less torture porny than most Robert Jordan magic woman rituals. Still pretty torture porny though.
I guess I would say I only think it's slightly less because we don't really linger on any of the situations. Like, I think it's quite egregious. Like, Nynaeve is naked.
Most of the time,
because why the fuck wouldn't she be?
No one's ever not naked when you're a woman doing a magic ritual. That would be stupid.
Yeah, and at least I guess it's less like Nynaeve being like tied up or spanked or threatened with sexual assault, and more just being like in hazardous situations.
Yeah, there's nothing overtly sexual about it, or like, yeah, exactly like you said. There's no Trollocs or Murdrel approaching to sexually assault her. Most of her bad situations seem to be gender neutral, let's say.
Yeah.
Getting bitten by a lot of scary bugs, or having to leave some children to die.
Yeah.
Or being in a battle where she can't assist at the front lines, people she cares about. Yeah, so that's great. So great, I guess, Brandon, but also, what a stupid test.
Yeah. We also start, like, immediately at the test. Like, we don't get any of Nynaeve's, like, return to the White Tower, which kind of bummed me out. Like, I was kind of interested to see how
that the politics
played out. Yeah, I feel like we get so much Aes Sedai politics all the time. It was kind of a weird time to finally skip that.
Yeah, what we get instead is kind of like Nynaeve's being escorted by some lady named Razel, who, I swear to God, like, how are we still coming up with new Aes Sedai? You know, this chick's the new Mistress of Novices, and I'm like, how have I never fucking heard of her then?
Yeah, couldn't we have picked one that I already met?
Can we just pick people? I know. Anyway, Razel is of the Yellow Aja, and Nynaeve's like, she's surprisingly nice to me. Most Yellow Aja hate my fucking guts for some stupid reason, but she's pretty chill and respects me, and we have a nice working relationship. As opposed to everyone else who's doing the testing of me, and they all hate my guts also. And I'm like, that's not a lot of, like, yeah, you're right. There's just, like, not a lot of nuance in terms of how people see Nynaeve. I think it would be, I think it would be one thing if she came back and met some resistance because people think, like, Edwene favors her or something, anything, but it's like, I don't even know how long she's been here.
Yeah, it's like impossible.
For all I know, she arrived 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
But we're just jumping right into the test, which involves a terangrial, because of course it does. It's shaped like a vagina, because of course it is.
Like aggressively like a vagina.
Yeah.
It's just like a big oval on the floor.
Tapered at either end.
Yeah.
And they're like, here it is. And I'm like, how is no one?
Like, the White Tower couldn't get any more Yonic.
Yeah, they're just like, you must remember that we all have pussies, because transgender and intersex people don't exist in the Wheel of Time. And if they did, Robert Jordan would find some horrible way to torture or sexualize them. So
Yeah.
here we are. Anyway, the test is that you go through the terangrial and you get like some dumb memory wiping spell on you. So it's like you go in, you're in a situation, you don't remember how, but then you have to go to a marked place and do the weave of the 100 weaves. So there's 100 little situations that you have to get through and do. You're not allowed to channel except for the weave, and like all you remember is, okay, I need to do the 56th weave or whatever.
Yeah, the rules are like you can't channel until you get to the star.
You have to walk calmly to everything.
You can't like rush, and you're just supposed to go from one of the stars to another and not do anything else. And it's like really silly, as Nynaeve will point out.
And unlike with the terangrial for the accepted test, which just seems to draw, its situations from the person's psyche, there's a sort of mind reading element there. Mm-hmm. This one is like crafted by people. So there's 100 situations and like, I don't know, 8 or 9 women who are just standing around coming up with these.
Yeah.
Like, here's the new things to have Nynaeve get through. Here's terrible shit. And it's like, you can get physically injured in there. Things that happen in there happen in real life. And yeah, like Sally said, we obviously don't go through all 100 because that would be insane.
Yeah, thank God.
We get like 5, and then Nynaeve just kind of skims over most of them where they're just intercut. But like we said, the challenges are like, you have to run away and not panic from something that's happening, or you have to leave sick children to die, or you have to, quote, die. We don't know what happens to them.
Yeah.
You're in the 2 rivers and it's under attack, and you have to walk away from everyone being under attack. Oh, and of course at the end, Lan shows up and is gonna die, and you have to choose between rescuing him and doing your test. Mm-hmm. Obviously, because of Nynaeve who Nynaeve is as a person, she's bad at the parameters of the test.
Yeah.
She can do all the weaves, which is like the standardized testing element of this. Like, they're kind of like, you need to know how to act under pressure. And like, that's exactly what the American school system says when they give you the stupidest fucking rote memorization test on the planet. And people's ability to pass or fail has almost literally nothing to do with whether or not they have learned the content.
Yeah.
So great. And the weaves are useless, so it's dumb. And the other things the other things that they're tested on are like, can you act calm and collected and not show any emotion or whatever under pressure, and also, can you like choose a higher purpose instead of assisting, whatever bad situation is right in front of you. And Nynaeve comes out of this test, all like beaten the fuck up.
Yeah, like fucking brutalized.
Yeah. And everyone's like, quick, heal her. Oh my gosh. I can't believe this one of them is Saren, I think, is like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. And I'm like, girl, you were there. You were in that. You were part of that.
I know, it's very interesting to me. It's like, if there are approximately 10 women doing approximately 10 of the tests, do they like go like you do 10 and the next woman does 10? Was Saren doing the like really chill one at the beginning and then had to sit there and be like, Lelaine just tried to kill this bitch with napalm?
She's
like what?
I didn't know we were doing this.
She's like, and it's like one of those things that feels needlessly intense for Nynaeve. Like, Saren is just like, there was absolutely no reason for that to be intense. And it seems like everyone just fucking hates Nynaeve for
everyone's
truly
like,
no reason.
We just have to test her extra hard because we don't like that she got raised to an Aes Sedai before taking the test, and we don't like that she is Egg's friend, and we just don't like her, period, because she's a raging bitch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, every woman in this room is a raging bitch, so look in the mirror.
Look in the giant vagina mirror on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Robert Jordan doesn't know how to write women who aren't bitches, so... Or sluts. You're right. It's the bitch or the slut.
Bitch or a slut,
Yeah. Those are the two. genders.
Madonna whore complex who?
What?
It's the bitch slut complex.
Would be so great to have that as the title of this episode, but iTunes would censor us.
iTunes, we've been censored on
I
It'll
know.
just put stars where it says bitch and probably slut.
Yeah,
So it'd
I've
be like-
tried to put slut in the fucking episode title before you
And
guys.
iTunes is like, that's a bad word.
That's a bad word.
Spotify doesn't censor it, I don't think. Nynaeve gets healed.
Oh yeah, and Nynaeve gets healed. Saren's like, this was an outrage. And I'm like, okay, you participated, but whatever.
It's always funny when people participate in the horrors and then we're like, that was pretty horrible.
That was a lot more horrible than I was expecting. And I'm like, you could have done something.
Could have ended it.
Yeah, we don't really see outside of Nynaeve's perspective, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
like, once you start, can you not stop? Can we not pause to talk about this? Give Nynaeve a, like, scenario where she just has to walk a really long way while we chat this
just,
out.
like, debrief.
Yeah, okay, ladies.
Round table.
I think we're getting a little hateful here.
Yeah, it feels a little malicious.
The ethics board will hear about this.
I wish the White Tower had an ethics
God,
board.
I wish everyone in this series had an ethics board.
Rand just has an ethics board
I wish
following
Robert
him
Jordan
around.
had an ethics board.
Yeah.
That, you know what? That's a really compelling thought, Rand. You know, your chosen one war criminal having an ethics board following you around.
Yeah.
Just someone who's documenting all the war crimes.
Yeah.
That
I'm
should have
taking
been
it
Loyal.
back.
Yeah.
Loyal being like, the board's gonna hear about that one,
Loyal's
Rand.
like, the assignment has changed. I was going to write a biography, but it has now become a documentation.
Yeah, I'm documenting the war crimes you were committing, and I'm taking
After
it.
the last, assuming we all survive the last battle, there will be Geneva Conventions.
Yeah. Loyal's gonna use his book of translation to take these complaints directly to the creator.
Yeah, he's gonna be like, hello? I
you
would
s-
like some international laws, please.
Yeah.
Please. Not that some people pay attention to international law. So, Zaren's like, that was an outrage. And then, Nynaeve immediately is like, it was an outrage, but not for the reasons you think. They're like, obviously you failed. And Nynaeve's like, why? It's a stupid test. Stupid tests get stupid results.
Yeah.
They're like, well, you didn't always walk like you were supposed to and stay calm. And she's like, in the real world, would I walk everywhere?
Yeah. If people
I'm
were being
being
burned,
bombed?
yeah.
Would I walk? What in the world? And they're like, you didn't stay calm under pressure. And she's like, I did all the weaves. And in that, I was able to stay on task. But of course, I diverted some attention to things that required my attention. Mm-hmm. And of course, if it was a choice between my husband dying and the White Tower, I would choose my husband because I'm not some weird freak.
Yeah. Before.
And they're like, gasp.
Yeah, before, like, the board comes over to deliver their results, like, Egg walks over serenely and bitchfully to be like, I'm the one who put Lan in that test. The most traumatic one you had to go through. I just want you to know that I did that.
I did that. Tell Cersei it was me.
Tell Cersei it was me. And she's like, if I didn't do it, nobody would do it. And Nynaeve is like, okay, Egg,
Well,
fuck
I'm
your
glad.
institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, actually, I'm really glad you did that because it made me realize that I don't give a fuck about this institution. Your institution is fucked, and we should not all be so mindlessly devoted to the White Tower as a concept versus being devoted to the people we're trying to help. And Egg is like, don't say those things.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not here to be a worker bee to your little queen bee. I am a person with agency and feelings.
Yeah.
And sorry I have a lot of magic, but you're just gonna have to deal with that in a different way than basically paralyzing everyone with terror
Yeah.
about what will happen to them if they disobey the White Tower. And Egg's like, not a popular opinion. Maybe don't spread that one around. And Nynaeve's like, filling out her propaganda campaign.
Yeah.
She's like, sure, I won't spread it around.
She's got her 92 theses.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not gonna nail anything to the door of the White Tower.
cough,
What are you
cough.
talking about? She's gonna nail Lan the door of the White Tower.
Being like, everyone else should have a husband.
Yeah, look how cool it is.
But the board of directors, or whatever we want to call them, marches over and are like, you failed. And Nynaeve's like, no, I didn't. And they're like, okay, well, I guess we have to vote on it. And she passes by like 1 vote.
First, they're like, you have to you pass on the condition that you promise to not use balefire.
She uses balefire in one of the
In
tests.
the last one with Lan, because he's being chased by dark hounds. And she's like, I don't know another way to beat dark hounds. And they're like, well, you can't use balefire except with approval. And she's like, so I gotta fill out some paperwork if I'm getting attacked by dark hounds? That's great.
Yeah.
She's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And they're like, fine, well, we'll take a vote on it. And she passes anyway by like 1 vote. And they're like, okay, well, fan-freaking-tastic, bitch. You get to be an Aes Sedai for realsies. So get your shawl and your ring at the door. Leave us a review on Yelp. See ya when we see ya. They're like, you need to spend the night in meditation. And Nynaeve's like, I'm gonna pop off and do an errand real quick, but then sure, I'll come back and do your stupid meditation. And her errand is that she travels to Muriel, who's apparently like camped outside the Black Tower.
Yeah, that was wild to me too.
Yeah, like I knew that they were sending people to go. Like Rand was like, hey ladies, come get your Ashaman here.
Man for sale.
Man for sale! I knew that was happening, but I didn't know Muriel went. Not that I need to know, it's like fine. It just was like, well,
I was like, oh, okay.
okay, this bitch needs more warders? Says who?
Yeah, she's like, I'll take another. And it's like, you have 9.
You have 7.
What are you
Girl.
doing?
She's like, yeah, and I can handle 7 more. And I'm like, no, you can't.
Yeah, she just got like a fleet of them.
Here's my fleet of warders.
She's building her own
They
legion.
always walk in formation.
Yeah.
They're like backup.
They're always
They're like
in a
Beyonce's backup dancers.
I was gonna say they're always in a phalanx. They're little shields.
And there's like a whole ritual about who gets to be the point of the phalanx.
Yeah.
It's like whoever fills their chore chart out first.
Yeah, it's like a hierarchy thing, like a point system.
Yeah.
Your punch card system to get to the front of the phalanx.
Yes. Mom,
It's
my turn at the front of the phalanx. Mom said it's my turn at the front of the phalanx.
Oh, so good.
Okay,
She demands that Morel give her Lan's bond,
Yeah,
and
she's
Morel's
like-
a real cunt about it.
yeah, she's like, pass it back. And Muriel's like, I don't think you can handle it. And Nynaeve's like,
And Nynaeve is so funny in this scene, though. Like, Morel walks out in her, like, slutty little nightgown,
Yeah.
and there's, like, a half-naked man in the back of her tent, you know, like, laying on a bearskin
yeah,
rug,
it's
basically.
like a tableau of, sexual decadence, Robert Jordan style.
And Nynaeve's like, you're gonna give it to me, or I'm gonna come in there and whoop your ass.
She's
and
like,
Morel's
guess what? I haven't taken the 3 oaths yet, which means I can do violence. And I will.
And I will.
And Muriel's like, fine.
Like, okay.
Okay.
I just, like, think Nynaeve is so funny. Like,
I
I'm
know.
so glad someone's finally threatening to just, like, beat Morel up.
Yeah, and Nynaeve's canonically like 5'2" and is just going around being like, I'm gonna rip your tongue out of your head if you don't give me my husband.
Yeah.
And it's like, slay.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, I think more magic women should be like,
My husband.
forget about my magic. I have 2 hands
Yeah.
and a great capacity for violence.
Great capacity.
And I'm like, yeah, slay, bitch.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other things about Nynaeve's test that I think are worth mentioning. The whole balefire thing is obviously like a larger issue.
Yeah.
And it'll come back in A Memory of Light. Like, balefire is more or less this world's equivalent to nuclear weapons.
Sure.
Obviously, no one should have the power to fire nuclear weapons without some sort of... Well, basically, no one should have the power to fire nuclear weapons. The cost is too great to the world.
Yeah.
Of course, people have not been operating... people don't have... like, evidence of that. Thus far in the series, we have not really seen that balefire has a detrimental effect to anything. It kills the bad guys, or the good guys in Rand's case. But, like, it brings people back to life. It seems like a sweet power. All we have is that a lot of people are saying, don't do it.
Yeah, including people from the Age of Legends, like Asmodean, being like, I have seen the consequences of this, and these are very bad. So Asmodean playing our Cassandra figure there for a minute.
Yeah, and like when we get Forsaken flashbacks, like when Grendel's whole house gets balefired, she's like, "Ugh,
Like, this is bad. And
this is bad.
you can, like, what does she call it? The, like, weird aftershock.
The Bale Scream.
Yeah.
Transformer's name.
Bale Scream.
Bale Scream. Yeah, so we have like some long ago, some ancient wisdom pertaining to that, but the way it's a very like, I don't think it's good, but it's a very human trait to be like, well, this sign doesn't apply to me because I can't read. I've never seen Balefire do anything bad, so why not? Which is Rand and Nynaeve's general attitude about it. Luckily, a memory of light will sort of like fulfill the premise that, yeah, Balefire is bad, and overusing it leads to bad shit in the world. So I'm glad that will happen. But it's sad that we don't get any, like, wraparound to this moment, you know? And people being like, yeah, we really should sort of, like, legislate, in a way, the use of Balefire. Like, no, you don't want to fill out paperwork when you're being attacked by Darkhounds, but there's a board of ethics that needs to be informed.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I know the board of ethics is like a jokey little bit we were doing, but the more I say here, the more I'm like, there is actual, like, value to that concept as a whole being applied, not only to the Wheel of Time, but I think to a lot of the real world, as well as epic fantasy in particular, or fantasy that's dealing with, like, large scale battles with large scale enemies. This Balefire instance is very stark in terms of, like, well, we have something, why wouldn't we use it? Like, the evil is so great, and that itself is such, like, a slippery statement that has been used so often. Nuclear power really is the only thing we can kind of compare Balefire to, and just think of the, like, dropping of the A-bombs on Japan, and even the, like, testing of nuclear bombs in the American West in particular, and the effects that it had on those communities. Like, the idea that, like, using these weapons is the lesser of two evils, the evil generally being, like, communism, the other the greater quote-unquote evil. A little history joke there for my friends, but it's such a slippery slope that I feel like I've not seen a text do a good job examining the fact that it is so slippery versus leaning entirely very sort of, like, pro militarization of having these weapons in the hands of our quote-unquote leaders to use at will, and it just feels extremely disgusting.
Yeah, it's a very American, or rather a very Western thing to do, to set up this premise where some people, just at random, the luck of the draw, some people have the power. You know, this isn't a thing where you get elected to a position and then you get the nuclear codes, whatever, which is still a flawed system. But it's at least slightly better than just randomly some people can nuke others. And the premise just being like, well, that's not a problem, and in fact it's desirable because these are the good guys. They would never misuse that. And of course they have every reason to use that because they're fighting evil. And it's like, that's such stark black and white thinking. And of course you also can't make that argument in the Wheel of Time because our good guys are all around pretty nasty people.
Yeah, like, Rand did nuke an entire town.
Yeah, hey, remember that? Because I feel like we're the only ones who do.
Yeah, it really does feel just kind of like, oops, which is also, like, a very Western idea to using weapons of mass destruction. I mean, already it seems as though people are consuming images from Gaza and immediately forgetting that people, like, weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons are being used on civilians. They're just like,
Yeah, Rand's thinking was a very, like, I can bomb a hospital because I think there's one terrorist hiding inside.
Yeah.
And that's not okay.
It's not.
But we're just so American that we're like, well, but it's fine because he feels bad about it now. Or he did for like a minute. And now he has to live his life again with his hot girlfriend. So maybe for his mental health, stop thinking about it.
Maybe for his mental health, stop thinking about it. And also, like, don't you think it was worth the risk of bombing that entire fortress with the possibility of killing Grendel? Is sort of the attitude that the narrative takes by not having Rand face any of these consequences. Like, we've talked about extensively about the fact that Rand should be put on some sort of, legal trial at bare minimum. And for the narrative to not do that is, again, just taking this sort of justified stance of being like, well, it was collateral damage, I think is... Obviously, we're pulling a lot from the situation in Gaza because that's what's happening right now, and I have heard many people specifically refer to the civilians of Gaza as collateral damage in this fight, which is disgusting, but that phrase has been used in many, many other situations where weapons of mass destruction were used with the chance of winning, quote-unquote, winning the day, and, the world at large paying the consequence for that. Collateral damage.
Yeah, my beef with this is just that Nynaeve's like, well, you're gonna have to trust my judgment. And everyone's like, okay, there's no one being like, okay, well, we physically can't stop Nynaeve from doing this, but that we can set up some form of consequences if her judgment turns out to be wrong, which, because she's human, it all too likely will be.
Yeah, absolutely.
There should be some form of consequence.
Yeah, it is pretty wild for everyone, for Nynaeve, for them to be like, you can't do this, and Nynaeve being like, I am going to do this, and then being like, oh, well, that's the end of our power in this situation.
Okay, sorry, well, we tried, and it's like...
You could try a little harder.
Yeah,
like,
you could do something, maybe.
Even if she doesn't agree, like, again, you are the governing magical body, and if you aren't governing the use of magic, then what are you doing?
Here for? Yeah.
What is the purpose of you?
The other thing about Nynaeve's test is that her hair gets cut. Yeah, which is just like a sort of gag-worthy trope generally, and I find that a lot of male creators specifically tend to use it to indicate that a woman has gone through a trauma or has gone through like a character shift. Often it is used to refer to like, this woman is coming into her power, a la Sakura from Naruto. Anyway, and it's just like... silly. Your hair doesn't indicate anything about you, for one thing. For another thing, it's just kind of like a really subtle way, especially in this instance, for a woman to be degraded. I believe we've talked about how like women's hair in a lot of cultures and in a lot of periods of history is seen as like connected to her worth, her beauty, herself in a way. And so to have something violently happen to it, as to alleged collaborators throughout Europe during World War II, is to it's the sole purpose is degradation.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with that bit of history, women who were found to be or accused of particularly sleeping with Nazi soldiers, whether or not it was consensual, were often like dragged into the street and their heads forcibly shaved, and it was extremely brutal. And Emily is exactly right. The point is just to degrade them and to somehow dehumanize them, because again, hair is so connected to womanhood in lots of ways, for better or for worse. It just is. And so yeah, Nynaeve having it cut here, just like a senseless way of degradation. It's also like masculinizing. You'll see a lot of, again, female characters cut their hair either to like blend in and quote unquote cross-dress like Mulan, therefore going through a sort of like symbolic masculinization, or to like elect a different role, a la Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, getting a boyish haircut. But it feels just like, again, a way to like disconnect from the fact that she is a woman.
And I fully believe that in this instance, Brandon Sanderson, assuming it was his decision, meant it to be empowering.
Yeah.
Because Nynaeve has always had her long braid and frequently has treated it like a crutch.
Yeah.
A sort of like emotional...
Yeah, pulling on it.
But crutches aren't bad things in most cases. They help you. Nynaeve pulling on her hair, there's nothing wrong with that.
It's better than slapping someone.
Yeah, which, if I were Nynaeve, I'd be doing a lot more often.
Yeah. No, that was the perfect bridge from, like, masculinization to being, like, yeah, the point is, like, it's more powerful when you don't have long hair. And I feel like a lot of, like, in action movies or, like, male authors will be like, it's just, like, not practical for a woman to have long hair. And it's like, well, buns and ponytails exist. Like, you can still have long hair and, like, fight.
Yeah.
You don't have to, like, have a buzz cut, you know?
Yeah, the only fighting hairstyle is a buzz cut.
Yeah.
Okay, or if you're a sexy woman, then just loose hair.
Then loose hair, which is not practical.
Worse. So much worse. Tell me you've never had long hair without telling me.
My hair is, like, barely shoulder length right now, and the second it gets in my eyes, I'm like, well, this is the end for me.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I can't cope with anything.
Yeah, it's windy outside today. I'm like, well, can't leave the house.
Yeah, so it's just a silly, stupid thing that happens to Nynaeve. But we end with Nynaeve having Lan's bond passed to her, and she's like, wow, I can tell he's still alive. Yippee! And it's like, well, I wish he wasn't. Speaking of degrading women, we then get a section, actually first, in the middle of this section is another Ituralde chapter. Ituralde has retreated from his, like, camp that he had set up in front of Meridon to now they are much closer to Meridon. We didn't mention this last time, but the prevailing issue is that Ituralde cannot actually use Meridon as a base of operations or to, like, build a defense inside because the Saldeans are like, you're an Eridomani army. You're invading. Yeah, we can't just let you in. Which isn't really an issue I care to discuss. It is, yeah, Rand should have sent a Saldean army, and it's nice to see consequences of that, I guess. It is, of course, also a little silly because the Domani are clearly fighting Trollocs.
Yeah.
So there's stupidity on both sides.
Yeah, that's per usual.
But this section involves, more trauma. Everyone's upset. Ituralde ends up, like, actually fighting in the thick of things because his front lines buckle. His horse falls on him, his leg breaks. But luckily, the Saldeans inside Meridon emerge and usher Ituralde and his men back inside. We meet a guy named Ueli, who is like, Ituralde's like, it took you such a long time, and Ueli's like, yeah, I'll really pay for this day. And we'll find out later that there was infighting in Meridon about whether or not to assist the Domani army. So, yeah, big issues.
Yeah.
But that's it. Ituralde's stressed. Is the main takeaway.
Being cavalry would be so scary. The idea of a horse falling on your leg, which I'm sure happened and happens all the time.
Yeah, Ituralde getting attacked is very King Theoden in the battle in front of Minas Tirith. Okay, now speaking of degrading women, we have a sequence with Perrin and one of his councils with the rest of everyone. The people who had gone to Cairhien are reporting on what they found. There's not really anything terribly relevant in what they, like, nothing that we don't know. We're just seeing Perrin respond to stuff we already know. Perrin does mention very casually, as they're talking about, like, the Andor Cairhien crown situation. He's like, well, Rand told me that one of the Forsaken was in Andor masquerading as this nobleman and, like, seducing the queen and whatnot. Morgoth, of course, is serving tea. And believe it or not, this is the first time that anyone has even mentioned in Morgoth's presence that one of the Forsaken was Gabriel. Yeah. So she, of course, has a crisis, like drops her tea and is just like, I need to leave. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, okay, that was weird.
Yeah.
They're like, what an odd woman. But they go on with their council. Perrin talks about, like, let's start sending people away because Grady and Yeld are well enough to make gateways again. Tam's like, I'm telling you, no one wants to leave. And Perrin's like, well, some people have to want to leave. And Tam's like, they'll want to come back. They all know it's the last battle. They're just gonna maybe go see if anything is left at home and then want to join the army again. And Perrin's like, I choose not to see it.
This sign doesn't apply to me because I can't read.
Yeah, yet again. Everyone's like, what's the White Cloak situation? And Perrin's like, well, they won't get out of our way. They won't return our people. They want to fight. So guess we're fighting.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, okay, sick. But Perrin stays back, or Balwer calls Perrin to stay back. Balwer's like, yeah, I need to tell you something about the White Cloaks. And Perrin's like, Balwer, I don't want to hear about the White Cloaks if it's not anything to do with this particular group. And like, I get it, Balwer's annoying about his parasocial relationship with the White Cloaks. But also, you can't just tell your spy master, who you don't know is your spy master, because that's how oblivious you are. Maybe don't tell me about some things.
Yeah.
It's an insane thing to do.
Yeah.
Perrin's like, I don't want to hear it. And Balwer's like, but... And Perrin's like, no. And
Do you know
Balwer's
what
like,
it was that he was going to tell him?
What?
Do you know what it was that he was going to tell him?
No. Probably not anything important.
Still, the whole thing grates, because it's like, you pay him to get information for you.
Yeah.
Let him give you information.
Yeah.
Don't
Duh.
be a bitch.
Balwer gives Perrin a copy of the, like, wanted poster of his and Matt's faces, and is like, hey, these are circulating amongst, you know, bad people, assassins. And Perrin's like, well, must be Tuesday. Someone's always wanting to assassinate me. Not really anything I can do about that. Balwer's like, okay, extremely cavalier, but what are we gonna do? Perrin's like, Balwer, I've noticed there's something a little odd about you. I don't think you're really a secretary. And Balwer's like, oh, did you notice that? That's so strange.
Yeah, and Baller's like, oh. Word?
Wild. And Perrin's like, so I just think, like, you're doing so much more. I should be paying you more. And Balwer is like, but you never work a day in your life when you love what you do, my man.
Yeah, it's very silly.
Yeah. And I'm like, Balwer, take the money.
Yeah, like his one practical argument, he's like, you don't want to pay me like I'm a spy master, because anyone looking at your books will know that I am your spy master.
Yeah,
so
and
it's
it's
like,
like,
you could do like an under the table
Yeah,
sort
so
of
pay him
situation.
off the books.
Yeah.
Duh.
And Baller's like, no, it's fine to me that I make $5 an hour.
Balwer's like, I actually love it because you're just the best leader that there ever has been. And I just love working for you specifically. And I'm like, you'd like working for Matt more.
Oh, are you joking?
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I can list 5 people off the top of my head who you'd enjoy working for more. Tom.
Tom, Matt, Etugerald,
Yeah. Etugerald. Bashir.
Bashir,
Ruark.
Barrelane.
Barrelane.
Barrelane would actually know what to do with the
Barrelane would be
information
like,
you
"Fuck
gave
yes,
her.
This is incredible.
Egg, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, Balwer, there are so many bigger dreams that you could be having, so it's just silly that this scene is silly.
Yeah.
We then flash over to Morgause, who's having, like, some me time. Talonvor comes up and is like, I'm off to enlist in Ilion because you don't love me. And she's like, oh, that's so weird. I thought I heard you say that you were never gonna leave my side. And he's like, well, you've made it clear that I'll never get to fuck you, so devotion out the window. He's like, I'm still devoted to you, body and soul, but my actual body will be in Ilion. And she's like, okay, well, today I found out that this guy that I had a relationship with was actually brainwashing me, so that's a big deal. And he's like, yo, what the fuck?
Yeah, well, he says something incredibly rude where he's like, you still think about Gabriel. Gabriel's the one you love. I know that you love him more than me. And she's like, the one who was brainwashing and assaulting me?
Yeah, she's like,
and he's like, oh.
She's like, he gave me a lobotomy, so, like a magical lobotomy. And he's like, oh, well, you still love him more than me. And she's like, oh my fucking god.
Talonvor should be shot on sight.
I know. If he were in front of me, I'd kill him.
But
Like,
she's
way to make it all about you, bud.
I know, he's just, that's the thing. Is it like some sort of like in horrible men's rights movement happening in Andor that both Gawain and Talonvor are like this? Galad's got some weird stuff like this.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's the, like, chivalry complex that Robert Jordan doesn't seem to be aware of,
Yeah,
yet he's given to all of his Andoran male characters.
So rancid. But she asks him not. Sorry, go ahead.
No, just she's like, she also is like, it's so crazy because I've never had anyone like you before. No one's ever just loved me for who I am. And it's so wild. And I don't know what to do with that. I've never had a man just love me. And I'm like, I truly don't know what to do with this, girl.
Yeah, she talks specifically about how much Talonvor, like, fought to get her out of Malden, the same way Perrin fought to get Fael out of Malden.
They said you didn't rest.
And she's like, there's no way Tarangale would have done this. Or Tom. And I'm like, well, Tom would have solved the problem, first of all.
Tom killed people for you.
Yeah. So.
Like, yeah, it's just wild because she's like, I'm putting all of my past relationships up to some weird standard of devotion that none of them could fulfill because they didn't know that they needed to. It's just a really weird retrospective way to think about all of your exes. Mm-hmm. It's like, Morgoth, yes, of course you have had some bad exes. If you count Gabriel, absolutely rancid, terrible. Mm-hmm. No. Tarangale was an arranged marriage. It sounds like you guys didn't love each other and he tried to, bad.
Yeah.
But, like, Tom and Gareth Bryn, I don't really like either of them as romantic figures. But I don't think it's really fair to be like, Tom just wanted to win me. And I'm like, how do you know that?
Yeah, and it's like, that is not a claim that we can substantiate because we've never really been in Tom's head when he's thinking about Morgause, except for him being like, it sucks that she chased me out of Andor the way that she did.
Yeah, all we've ever heard about Tom saying about Morgause is like, I loved her. She was a wonderful woman, so smart.
Yeah.
It's a real shame that I had to get run out of Andor.
Yeah.
Oh, and I killed Tarangale for her. Good. In a, quote, hunting accident,
I killed
unquote.
that bitch.
And Gareth Bryn has been very similar. He's like, well, she ran me out.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, it's just, like, absolutely zero critical thought from Morgause. Like, yes, everything she says about Gabriel/Robin is totally fair and valid. And I think there's an argument to be made that, like, that's coloring kind of her thoughts about past relationships in general. Tarangale sounds like a piece of shit, but not necessarily any more so than just, like, your average arranged marriage where you didn't really like each other, and he was kind of technically running things because he was, it sounds like at that point, maybe a more experienced politician or had more allies or something, like, not really his fault.
Yeah, typical political stuff.
Yeah. And it's just, like, not very critical, and, like, also her not really understanding that, like, this one-sided devotion in their relationship is bad. Like, the setup of, like, Queensguard and Queen being in a romantic relationship is founded on such a power imbalance. It sounds like that's what she's really been wanting in her relationships, is not an equal at all.
It's to be the one in charge.
Yeah.
Or at least to have the relationship have started that way. To have him looking up to her. Mm-hmm. Which is ridiculous, because she says of Gareth Bryn, like, to him I was just a queen to be served. And it's like, what is Talonvor to you then?
Yeah.
What are you to him?
Yeah, like, it doesn't make any sense.
His, like, long-term yearning for you was very much like a parasocial, sorry to abuse that term this episode, but I am using it seriously this time. Like, he had a crush on a celebrity from a distance.
Yeah.
More or less. He didn't know you.
No.
He still doesn't know you, I don't think, because you guys have never had a real conversation.
Yeah, it's all just about how bitchy he is about not being able to fuck you when he wants.
So, Morgause and Talonvor are an absolute train wreck, and the narrative is begging us to view them as this sort of pinnacle of romance. They're like, yeah, Morgause is right about her exes. Like, we're not being asked to exercise any critical thought. We're just supposed to be like, this is Morgause professing her maybe interest in Talonvor, that, like, with the clarity of knowing that Gabriel lobotomized me, I can really think about everything clearly. I don't know. Morgause went through a terrible trauma with Gabriel, and we're not trying to undermine that, but the narrative largely does not treat it as though it was a terrible trauma that would require Morgause to maybe be alone for a while.
Oh, yeah. The Wheel of Time would never suggest that a woman in particular take time alone in order to reflect on herself as a person outside of a romantic relationship.
Single women in Wheel of Time are an endangered species, I swear to God.
Yeah, they are also an invasive species that need to be eradicated.
Eliminated, yeah.
It's foul. Like,
a woman without a warder? What would we do? They have to have warders. It's selfish not to.
yeah, it's selfish not to have sex with men. Did you guys know that? I just think you should think about that.
Crazy.
I think you should think about that one. Yeah, I know, that was sarcastic, by the way, in case anybody, like, reads the transcript and is like, she said what?
Yeah, I don't think we put little sarcasm tags in
I don't
it.
put tags on the transcripts, because I never really think about it.
If you're ever, like, reading the transcript and you're like, oh, that was a pretty weird thing for them to say, might have been sarcasm.
It might have been sarcasm. Probably was.
Okay, well, fucking wow.
We did it.
My mood after that
Oh, yeah.
is bad.
Bad?
Gonna be honest, I'm feeling like quitting the podcast.
Okay, that's fair. I kind of feel the same way.
I don't feel anything positive about Morgoth and Talonvor, and that's the note we ended on, so...
Yeah, and Nynaeve's test wasn't, like, great.
Yeah, Nynaeve's test wasn't redemptive in any
I'm
measure.
gonna do mostly purple, which is feeling like quitting the podcast, with a little bit of red, which is mad.
Yeah,
'cause that's
I do feel
how I
mad,
feel,
too.
So,
But thank you for bearing with us. Thank you to Glenna McKenzie. I mean it. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon and our followers on social media. Anything else?
follow us on social media if you feel so inclined.
Like, subscribe.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of which, there are some, like, pretty mean reviews of the podcast that are kind of forefronted on our iTunes review page, because it was, like, a long time ago when people don't really review the podcast, which is totally fine. You don't have to review our podcast to, like it or listen to it. But if you feel so inclined to, like, leave a review that isn't calling us incredibly dumb, that would just feel nice.
Or getting after us for vocal fry.
Yeah, getting after us for vocal fry or having bad audio quality, which is like, yes, everyone knows that EHR had bad audio quality in the beginning. Like, sorry.
Still do sometimes.
Sorry, we don't have a professional podcast studio. Mm-hmm. You don't have to listen, and you didn't have to leave this mean review. So if you feel inclined to give us a nice review, that would certainly be a kind thing to do, but definitely not necessary.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna share a sign-off.
Yeah, please do. Emily, mix it up, get a little spicy.
I'm gonna share a sign-off. So, last Saturday night, I was with my friends, Devin and Janet, friends of the podcast, and we were watching the Dropout show Game Changer. Specifically an episode where everyone is competing for money by doing, like, terrible and degrading things.
Sure.
Like, the thing is, they propose a degrading thing and say, how much money would I have to give you to do this? And they sort of argue back and forth. And one of the suggestions was put a notch in your eyebrow. And everyone on the show was like, there's no way. That's the cringiest thing. I think it went finally for like $5,000.
Sure.
And I jokingly was like, I'd put a notch in my eyebrow right now for $5.
Yeah.
And Devin called my bluff, and now I do have a notch in my eyebrow.
I was noticing it, but I thought I was going crazy.
But now I have a notch in my eyebrow, so add that to your fan art.
Yeah, I think it looks very cool. I've always wanted to put a notch in my eyebrow.
You could do it. Devin and Janet did a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, I don't think I'm cool enough to pull off stuff like that.
Well, I don't think it's cool anymore. I think it was cool for like 5 minutes back in 2015. So now it's kind of like hot topic maybe of me to do.
If it makes you feel...
luckily, I'm a very self-confident person. So.
That's true. Emily is very self-confident and very cool, and if it makes you feel better, a lot of K-pop stars are putting notches in their eyebrows.
Oh my god.
So, and K-pop sets the trends,
That's
as we
true,
all know.
so it's gonna come back in right as I got one. Now the question becomes whether I keep it.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, if you're listening to this, Janet, it looks pretty good.
You did a good job, Janet. You did a really nice job.
Yeah, she had to take over for Devin because he was laughing too hard and so was I. So...
Yeah, Devin and Emily are not, like, the safest combo around sharp things, I would say. They get a sort of, like, small boy egging each other on sort of vibe.
Yeah, for Christmas this year, I'm gonna get Devin throwing knives.
Okay. Has this been Janet approved?
No.
Not that
If she hears this, Devin, I hope you're not listening.
Not that your partner needs to approve things because Devin's a grown man and can control his own safety. That was a joke, obviously.
Okay, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.